Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 2025 Council Agenda Briefing. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the audio and video of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, we move to item 1, which is the declaration of opening. Attendance by electronic means. Councillor Jennifer Navard has requested to attend tonight's meeting via audio link. So, in accordance with Regulation 14C and 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I've authorised Councillor Navard to attend the meeting by electronic means. Councillor Navard, in accordance with Regulation 14C Sub-Regulation 5 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, can you maintain confidentiality during the meeting and when the meeting goes behind closed doors?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Councillor Navard. Announcements from the presiding member. That's me. I wish to advise that Councillor Mary Choi has resigned from her position as a councillor, effective from yesterday, the 19th of May 2025. I understand that Councillor Choi has stepped down for personal reasons. On behalf of the City of South Perth, I'd like to thank Councillor Choi for her years of dedicated service to the City of South Perth and its community. First elected in 2019, Ms Choi has contributed to the City in numerous ways beyond her role of that as councillor, including serving on the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee, the CEO Evaluation Committee, and as a delegate to the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Group. On behalf of all of us, I thank Ms Choi and wish her the very best for the future, and once again, thank her for her service to the City of South Perth. That brings me to the next item, which is items for council. Agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8.1, 8.2, 9, 11, 13 and 14 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting to be held on the 27th of May 2025. Item 4 is attendances. Item 4.1 is apologies. That's nil for this evening. Item 4.2 is an approved leave of absence, but there are no approved leaves of absence for this evening. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as over the years I've developed positive working relationships with many sporting organisations and community clubs that might potentially be affected by or have an interest in this item. Folks, does anyone else have any declarations of interest that they wish to make this evening? Councillor Navard?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. We move now to item 8, which is presentations. Item 8.3 is deputations, and this evening we have 3 speakers who will have 10 minutes each in total to address council. And I'd like to begin by inviting Ms Janice Howell of Manning, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. Welcome, Ms Howell. If you'd like to come to the table there, we've got a microphone for you. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your deputation.
Thank you. Thank you for permitting me to address you about the view of the South Perth Bridge Club on the proposal for the multi-purpose community sporting facility at Challenger Reserve, which would include the South Perth Bridge Club. We have submitted a document describing some of our concerns and including a chart detailing our space requirements, which I believe has been circulated to you all. We believe our club is not asking for anything more than is reasonable after 40 years of growth. We have outgrown the present site, and while there is space for extensions to the building, there is limited capacity to increase the car parking. Car parking is the issue I'd like to address tonight. Currently, we have 60 bays plus 4 disabled bays. 3 days a week, we have morning and afternoon sessions, and there is a problem finding a parking spot when we arrive in the afternoon because the morning players have not yet departed. On at least one other day a week, there are always 30 to 40% more players than car parking bays. New expanded facilities will enable us to increase our teaching sessions and hold more sessions on mornings and afternoons than we do at present. The need for adequate parking close to our entry will be ever more apparent. And in our document, we refer to the age group that we're talking about. 80-year-olds and 90-year-olds can't trot along very easily. So I can't stress enough the need for sufficient parking allocated for Bridge Club use. And now I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Councillors, do we have any questions for Ms Howell this evening? Councillor Navard?
No, I don't have a question.
All right. Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Mr Timothy Howling of South Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1. But I don't think Mr Howling is here. In which case, I'll move on and invite Mr Brett Wood-Gush of Insight Urbanism of North Perth, who is speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.3.2. Welcome to you, Mr Wood-Gush.
Thank you.
We look forward to your deputation.
Thanks very much. I certainly won't be very long. I'm here to speak for the proposal by the officers of supporting the short stay accommodation at 185 Mill Point Road. And I apologise to the councillors in advance for taking the time on such a minor issue, but the state government has seen fit to decide whether somebody living in a house is a matter of planning urgency or not. So we're in the situation, I understand you've been going through developing policies to deal with short-term accommodation. We've lodged an application for approval for short-term accommodation. The officers have supported the application and have suggested a 1-year limit on the approval, which we're very grateful for in both cases, and we thank him for the time that they put into assessing the approval. It's actually been quite a bit of work on both sides. There was an advertising of the proposal, which went out to 48 people. There was one submission received, and it's worth noting this submission said they were concerned in two areas. One was disturbance in the area, and the second was impact on land values. As you know, short-term accommodation is usually a sort of more premium type of accommodation. It's advertised through platforms, and it's actually quite positive to have your area on those platforms. It shows that you have a range of uses, that you're a vibrant place to visit, and they tend to be that the people who run them provide a very high quality of presentation. So certainly there's more and more studies on this, certainly a benefit to the economy in the area, and it doesn't undermine areas. I note that it's much more difficult to move people on from rental accommodation when they're difficult. So this is the second question of disturbance. As you all know, you can be unfortunate to live next to a difficult neighbour. There's not much you can do about it. It can be even worse if it's somebody who's renting long term. Short stay accommodation is incredibly well managed, as you know. It's usually done through a very reliable booking system, and there's actually a rating system. As if you rate poorly on that rating system, you won't even see properties come up. You won't even be provided with the opportunity of renting those properties. So ratings is very important. On the other side, the people putting those properties up do all they can to present them well and to make sure that they don't disturb the neighbourhood, because they don't want to be in a situation where they get a bad reputation for that sort of outcome. So it was good to see the officers actually support the recommendation, and we believe it is as a good outcome. Just for a matter of interest, Mr Ross Graham actually owns the house. His intent is to redevelop. It's a very good property at the moment for short stay accommodation. There's beautiful views across to the city, a pool out the back. It's actually next to a residential town, so not the most optimal place for a long term to invest in a house, but that is Mr Graham's intention. So he'll be building there. He's been operating it for a number of years as a short stay accommodation with little or no issue. So it shows you that it's not an issue for the area. My final point, one of the reasons for attending, was to say there is a proposal for a 1-year approval. I understand that is procedural. I'm actually dealing with a number of these applications more out of generosity to the clients, because most people are bewildered that they have to go through the process. We're finding that almost as soon as you've got the approval, you're in a situation of having to seek the next approval. You usually have to approve 3 months, get that out 3 months early, because there's a 90-day, potentially a 90-day approval, if not longer, and you don't want to be operating without an approval. So it's going to become a revolving door for the officers, and I would suggest, given the impact on the area, that you look wherever possible to provide a longer-term recommendation. That said, my client is very happy with the 1 year, and we appreciate all the effort that's been put in, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your deputation. Councillors, any questions for Mr Wood-Gush this evening? Councillor Navard?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
No. Thank you very much for your deputation. We didn't have any other deputations, but I do see that Mr Howling has just arrived. So, Mr Howling, if you'd like to come up to the microphone. I understand you're speaking for the officer recommendation at item 10.1.1.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am, and thank you if I inconvenienced you by not being here when you called me up, and I apologise. The item at 10.1.1 deals with the question of the Challenger Reserve, and I welcome this opportunity to address you tonight in respect of this particular item. The reason being is that it has been, with the greatest of respect to Council, a matter of great procrastination to be able to push forward with any matter of sporting reserves within the city. I have a distinct interest in ensuring that the ratepayers of the city are properly provided for in respect to sporting infrastructure. And why? Because it reduces crime. Councillors who put themselves forward for election in the past had this to say when they were at least speaking to the ratepayers. They said, in the absence of RAF, we must deliver better access to sporting and recreation facilities. And at least on the part of the Mayor said, my recent motion supporting Wasps hockey is a start, but there's more to do. And I agree. And your Community Services Plan of 2019 agrees. But it's left for a long period of time on the shelf. And what I'm concerned about is that you as councillors are not going to support another proposal which is put forward, which is directly consistent with your own community plan for sporting infrastructure within this town. Recently, you posted a significant, and congratulations to each one of you, profit, or what one might call extensive revenue returns, which resulted in monies in the bank, but unfortunately the infrastructure in this town is wanting. I was born in the South Perth Hospital more than 50 years ago, and the unfortunate reality is that most infrastructure in this city is about the same age, and I'm looking pretty old and grey. And for that reason, it needs revitalisation. And even though this matter is on your agenda as it stands at the moment, you can note that since 2019 and at least 2020, there was a draft Challenger Reserve Plan. Then there was a proposal in 2022 to put some of the floodlights in place. That was followed up by a further plan in 2025. This follows from what your strategy said. And your strategy has undertaken the consultation. It is built on the consultation that was undertaken at that particular point in time. Further consultation and procrastination was not required because you have the strategic documents in place to support the infrastructure that you would want to spend the money on. What concerns me is that we will get to the position where a matter which is described as your key recommendation within your plan, that is at page 29, which identifies sports spaces for Challenger Reserve as being critical for upgrade for floodlighting to be undertaken within year 1, which has not as yet been completed, and by all accounts some of it's been done, we don't know how much, and certainly it appears as if it's not even proposed within the recommendation which is before you tonight. And that gives me a little bit of concern because it seems that at least your 2019 guiding strategic document, your Community Facilities Plan, does not properly identify or is not properly reflected at least within the proposed recommendation tonight. Your key recommendations of your strategic documents adopted 6 years ago should be implemented, and they should not be resisted, because it was the key recommendations of this local government 6 years ago. To not follow good governance processes in failing to adopt what is contained already, and to go around and round in circles and continue with consultation when the consultation was already completed a long time ago, is, with the greatest of respect, both unnecessary but also procrastination in delivering the outcomes. And what I ask is that this local government now not procrastinate any further, but simply implement the 2019 outcomes. No further studies are necessary. There is the platform for this to be placed within the agenda for the budget, and it is necessary to deliver those matters which you have identified in your own in your strategic documents as your key recommendations. I'm glad to see the Challenger Reserve is there. I am concerned when it comes to the leases that will be offered to the sporting clubs, that I have seen in the past, the proposed leases that have been suggested have been absolutely out of the park in terms of what the requirements might be. That is, that the sporting clubs will then be requested to remove all of the infrastructure, and the sorts of leases that will be then proposed for those sporting clubs will be beyond what a sporting club is properly able to bear, or that at some future point, the whole proposal will again be revisited and dumped. That would reflect poorly on the governance. It will reflect the fact that you can adopt your own structural plans and your proposals in 2019, but then not implement them. And for that reason, I simply ask this. I ask that you recommit yourself to those matters for which you stood in front of the ratepayers, inviting them to elect you. And I invite you to consider carefully the key recommendations of your 2019 strategic plan, which you've already adopted. I ask that you don't continue to simply undertake study after study after study, but deliver. These studies that were now undertaken by consultation with the various sporting clubs was necessarily undertaken and is referred to within your community facilities plan of 2019. A further study and a further discussion was not necessary. And in any event, your agenda makes clear it was just a discussion. Somebody went along and spoke to the people that were there. This 2019 document seemed to be comprehensive. And so for that reason, I'm asking, and I realise that some of you say, why is it necessary? This is a recommendation. Because I've seen recommendations undermined before in respect of sporting infrastructure in this city, and I'm concerned about the good governance of the processes by which you do not deliver for the ratepayers of this district, so that the infrastructure, which is now about as old as I am, is going to only become more decrepit and run down if there is not a joint interest in delivering infrastructure. We didn't have the RAF. That fell apart. We didn't have Wasps hockey moving in accordance with the requirements for the key recommendations after this local government had decided it would, and for reasons unknown or unclear at least, it didn't go forward. And it's that reason, when I saw this on the agenda tonight, I wanted to come and address you, because I'm concerned that the Challenger Park proposal, as included within your agenda, is going to be left to wallow in more studies, in more things that people have to think about before they deliver for the youth, and sometimes not so young people who want to engage in sporting activities in this town. It's critical. You've got the surplus. I ask that you deliver. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your deputation, Mr Howling. Councillors, does anyone have any questions for Mr Howling this evening? Councillor Navard?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your deputation,
Thank
Mr
you.
Howling. All right, we now move on to item 10, which is the draft Mayor reports. I now hand you over to the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Mr Gary Adams, to take you through the balance of the draft Mayor reports.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 10.1.1, Major Community Recreation Infrastructure Project Challenger Reserve Master Plan. The purpose of this report is to present the options assessment for the community recreation facilities at Challenger Reserve. The City has developed an options assessment in accordance with Council's previous resolution to review and compare 4 options for the Challenger reserve community recreation facilities. Namely, 1, maintain the existing facilities for existing users. 2, enhance the existing facilities for existing users. 3, replace the existing facilities with comparable or enhanced facilities broadly consistent with the current site configuration. Or 4, co-locate the facilities to include existing and other reasonably identified complementary potential users. The options assessment supports a hybrid outcome for the community recreation facilities at Challenger Reserve that combines parts of option 2 and option 4.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, Councillor Coveney, a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Would the city support an alternative motion to simply, as Mr Howling said, get on with it?
Who should I direct that one to, folks? Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's not actually up to the city to determine whether we progress with the project. It would require a resolution of council, but certainly the city is keen to progress the delivery of community infrastructure in accordance with the plans that council chooses to adopt.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Coveney?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Director Shaw. What's the reason why it's been recommended that we go through further consultation if we'd done it several years ago?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So there needed to be some further conversations with the clubs to refine the types of spaces that they needed within a shared use facility. When the administration has had workshops with council on community infrastructure, the general sentiment that we'd received from elected members, it was that they would like us to explore whether or not it would be appropriate to have a co-located facility at the site, or whether it would be more beneficial to have standalone replacement of facilities. So as a result of that, the previous report that we put to council in December recommended a number of options which council could have us explore. And as you're aware, council endorsed that officer recommendation. As such, we've now gone away, and as you can see, it is quite a high-level report in response, to just investigate what the actual costs are since this was last investigated, to give council the most information for them to be able to determine whether they'd like to progress with the various options that are contained within the attachment tonight. So if council forms a view next week that the hybrid option that's presented is the best way forward, then certainly the administration will implement that resolution of council.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Mr Adams?
And so I think it's important to remember that one of the things that we need to do is to go back and revise that initial concept design. Particularly, we've had some further conversations with clubs like the Bridge Club, and indeed the previous CEO and I met with the Bridge Club to really understand their needs and how they function and what the really big issues were for them in the previous concept that was presented. And so now we have a much greater understanding of that. And so we do actually need to go and revise that initial concept and master plan to take account of some of the things that you heard today. For example, the parking issue. When we spoke to the Bridge Club, we did have the idea that they might fit in with the golf course redevelopment. But when we looked at things like parking and when vehicles arrive and leave, it would have been really hard to accommodate them on that site, given the clash that would have occurred with the major times that golf is experiencing the same sort of busyness. So I think now we've done some more consultation. We've got we've got better understanding of some of the groups, like in particular the Bridge Club. So I think now we need to revise that concept plan, and then once everyone's happy with that, then I think that's the time to press the go button.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillor Coveney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So it seems, I understand from the answers, there might be some benefit from at least putting the revised concept plan out to the community or clubs maybe. But I do note that I think paragraph 3 of the recommendation says come back to us by no later than March 2026. Is there a chance we could bring that date earlier by 6 months and that would still be okay?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can. The reason that it was further out was just because we wanted to ensure that there was sufficient time to undertake the revised concept plan. And you'll notice in the report that we've recommended that we engage a consultant to provide that more level of detail in a revised plan. So should council progress with the officer recommendation, we would seek to engage with the club straight away to refine exactly what they need. And they have already provided us some preliminary feedback about what their space requirements are. But just to go through the process of appointing a consultant to actually start designing up a concept plan, revise, put it to the community, get any meaningful additional feedback from the community that may otherwise not have been consulted when the last concept plan was prepared, and then bring that back to council as soon as possible to enable to go to detailed design and construct.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions on this item, councillors? Councillor Prendeville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question regarding the user groups of this, of Challenger Reserve. The current users, do they use any other locations and facilities within the city of South Perth? And is the idea that this will facilitate all of their needs, or will the group still be needing any other locations?
Ms Shaw, should I send that your way?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so the South Perth Junior Cricket Club currently has a casual hire agreement to use a number of reserves throughout South Perth and within Vic Park as well. The Manning Bowls Club, obviously that's their standalone site. The soccer club is at capacity with their juniors, and they have approached the city seeking additional sports spaces that they could potentially use. There are potential opportunities for them to train on other reserves at different times, but as we go into detailed planning for this site, we would look to see whether there's any capacity to even include more junior pitches on the site, or to look at how we can effectively space the pitches on the site to improve capacity at the site. But yeah, the two, I suppose, key users in that sense, in terms of pitch space, would be the cricket club and the soccer club.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Prendeville.
Thank you, through the chair to Director Shaw. Just to follow up on that, is it not sort of just thinking about obviously the master plan, obviously it would be ideal for a particular sports club to have that one home. Has there been investigation into other spaces? So instead of sort of spreading them out, we can locate one there and possibly relocate another somewhere else? Is that an option for future planning?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is something we have looked at in the past, and if you recall, we did an investigation to see whether or not a sports space could be developed at Elm Street. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, but as with most inner city local governments, there's limited access to sports spaces and public open space in general. So the reality is that where there are clubs that have multiple teams in different leagues, etc., they have to train across multiple areas of public open space, albeit in relatively close proximity. However, the ability for one club to have a home ground where all of their teams could train and play is unfortunately just not a reality in South Perth.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Navard?
I think my questions were covered.
All right.
Thank you.
Councillor Coveney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a really short one. Do we have the capacity as an organisation to do this at the end of this year? So, for instance, if something was to come back to council in, say, October, could we pull the trigger then and we'd have the capacity to then get started?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would depend on the availability of a consultant, so we would need to look into that first. We would certainly be able to undertake further stakeholder consultation on a revised concept plan, but it just depends on whether there is somebody available to update that plan. In terms of following a decision of council on that, depending on the value of the works, it may require a formal business plan under the Local Government Act, in which case council would need to go through the statutory advertising process for that plan, as well as having various decisions on council. The ability to actually construct once a design has been agreed to by council will depend on whether or not we have availability or whether or not we would need to appoint contractors to actually deliver. So I think it is probably likely that we would progress it, as soon as reasonably practical in terms of appointing a consultant and actually undertaking consultation, but the actual delivery may be in a year or two. So.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Any further questions, councillors? No. Okay. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
Item 10.3.1, Network Renewal Underground Program Project, Kensington. This report discusses the provision of underground power in the Kensington area. As this is the final project to have the whole of South Perth undergrounded, a few remnants outside of Kensington are also included in the contract area. These properties are in South Perth, Collie Reserve and Waterford Triangle. Together, these form the project area as part of the Western Power Network Renewal Underground Power Pilot Tranche 2. The City recommends that Council accept the offer from Western Power and proceed with the project by authorising the Chief Executive Officer to sign the funding agreement.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Navard?
Yes, I do have one small question.
Fire away.
Just relates to page 13 of the discussion on the costings. And I'm only asking it because I think there was probably a typo there, which is to do with giving the residents some idea of the household's anticipated costs. So I was wondering if someone could just clarify that for the community, please.
Ms Ampremo, is that one I send to you or to someone else? No, Mr Lecoq?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, yes. There is a slight typo that has appeared, so it should read, rather than cost per resident, should refer to residents, or alternatively, we can even say assessment in terms of a rating assessment. Would be a better term to use as well.
Thank you, Mr Lecoq. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor D'Souza.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It mentions that the Waterford Triangle has been added to this process. However, they weren't consulted because the process was previously done in 2016. In addition to the stated invitations to information sessions going forward, is there anything further the City advises can and should be done? Because obviously the heading, the title is Kensington Underground Power. It's a very clearly in-demand project, but I'm not sure about the level of awareness of this project in the Waterford Triangle.
Who should I send that to, folks? Ms Ampremo?
Yeah, because the project was focused on Kensington, we are aware that there hasn't been the same level of engagement with the other areas. However, we are working to make sure that they're brought up to speed with the project.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Any further questions, councillors? No. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
10.3.2, Proposed Change of Use, Single House to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, Lot 7, number 185, Mill Point Road, South Perth. The purpose of this report is to consider an application for development approval for a change of use from a single house to unhosted short-term rental accommodation on Lot 7, number 185, Mill Point Road, South Perth. The item is referred to Council as the proposed land use falls outside the delegation to officers. For the reasons outlined in this report, it is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Navard?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
Item 10.3.3, RFT 14 of 2024, Supply and Application of Fertilisers, Herbicides, Pesticides and Soil Ameliorants Panel Arrangement. This report considers submissions received from the advertising of Tender 14 of 2024 for the supply and application of fertilisers, herbicides, pesticides and soil ameliorants. This report will outline the assessment process used during evaluation of the tenders received and recommend approval of a tender panel that provides the best value for money and level of service to the city.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, any questions for the administration, bearing in mind there is a confidential attachment? Councillor Navard?
No, I'm right, thank you.
All right, no questions. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
Item 10.4.1, listing of payments April 2025. This report presents to Council a list of accounts paid under delegated authority between 1 April 2025 to 30 April 2025 for information. It also includes purchase card transactions between 1 March 2025 and 31 March 2025 in line with new legislative requirements.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Navard?
No, I'm fine on that one, thank you.
All right, no questions. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
Item 10.4.2, monthly financial statements, April 2025. The monthly financial statements are provided within attachments A through to I, with high-level analysis contained in the comments of this report.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Navard?
No questions, thank you.
All right, no questions. Next item, please, Mr Adams.
Item 10.4.3, Audit, Risk and Governance Committee, appointment of presiding member and deputy presiding member. This report seeks the appointment of the presiding member and deputy presiding member for the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Navard?
Oh, yes, I do have one on that. I was just wondering if governance would explain the options that were inside their recommendation, just so that everyone understands how that could potentially work.
Mr Hindle?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. So next week, Council will be asked to appoint a presiding member and a deputy presiding member by 1 July for the period up until the October elections. This vote can appoint an independent presiding member and deputy presiding member. However, it's not recommended as there are only 2 committee meetings left. There'll be another decision post the 25 elections once the new committee is formed and the independent provisions are in effect at that point. So one decision next week and then again post the October 25 elections.
Thank you, Mr Hindle. Any further questions, folks? No. Okay. That brings us to item 12, which is motions of which previous notice has been given. That's nil for this evening. Item 15 is when we would ordinarily close the meeting to the public, if there was any reason for us to do that, but there isn't, so we won't. And item 16 is closure. So I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation this evening. I declare the meeting closed at 6:37 p.m. Thank you all and good night.